estate investors and entrepreneurs, business people, but even business people, not everyone likes it. Salespeople, unfortunately, and I'm definitely not painting everyone with the same brush. They don't necessarily like to share their successes and failures. It's more of a closed door policy, right? Like, I don't want to tell you what's working, Yuri, because you're a podcast host as well. If I tell you what's working, then Joe Blow is going to listen to your podcast more than he'll listen to mine, right? My macro thought process on all that is that the pie is big enough for everyone to eat. And if we run out of pies, we'll bake more. With real estate investors, though, what I found very unique and very interesting is, damn, do they like to talk, and do they love to share their story? Do they love to tell you exactly everything that worked, but also, and the way that I personally learn is from people's mistakes. This way I can cut time in half, right? And so it's always, there's a pattern in my life where I've always stuck close to mentors. Why? Because I knew I can cut my time in half. And so I had two, like, other than my dad and mom, who are my heroes, there's two mentors I had in my life that have propelled my success, right? Because they hit their head against the wall so many times, I didn't have to. So with real estate investors, my long-winded answer to your question is, get part of networking groups. Okay. Investor groups, okay? Meetups is what they kind of call them here in Canada and the state. I mean, the same term, but I don't know if you have real estate investor meetups, but like now, there's thousands upon thousands. There's actually more during the lockdown/pandemic than there was before, because we can do these things virtually. And then once we get live, like, you got to show up and you got to go and ask questions. And look, it's going to be tough the first 2, 3, 4 times you go, especially if you're like an introvert. Just know that everyone felt like that the first time they went. If you're listening right now, I promise you, if you go to a meetup, any other investor that is there, they are not like going to hold all their secrets close to their chest. They're there because they actually want to learn still, but they actually want to share. And so just ask the questions. Hey, like, what investment strategies do you employ? What was the biggest mistake you made when you were getting started? How do you get over financing hurdles? Those, and in my opinion, like, this is quite tactical now, Yuri, but open-ended questions. So don't ask a close-ended question like, Luke, do you own any properties? No. And now you can't go anywhere. So, like, it's what, you know what I mean? And so I would say, okay, hey, Junaid, what investment strategies have you done in the past? And then they can, and then they can start answering. And I can tell you, that's probably the easiest thing and the easiest place to start, because you're going to get all the information in one place. And then, like I said earlier, you have to take action. Because I think the biggest mistake I see investors make is, because I'm all about education, because, as I mentioned, it mitigates risk. But then it's like, okay, I want to do all the strategies. So I want to get into a pre-construction, like a new build condo. I want to do a multiplex. I want to do a single family home and some type of land development deal. Look, you should do them all because they're awesome and they're great, and diversify and all that. But do one first, and then probably stick to that strategy. I don't care which strategy you choose. Stick to it, though. And do it a couple of times. Which means that if you chose, okay, I want to do only buildings with 4 units in them. So when a building that comes out with 8 units, don't look at it. Don't get that shiny object syndrome, right? Like, okay, it's a new thing. Because what happens is, that's the mistake that I see investors make. They go to that new shiny object, and then they come up for reasons why they come up with reasons why they shouldn't invest there, and then they never actually end up doing anything. I've seen investors from when I met them to like 10 years later, and they're still searching. In 10 years here in the greater Toronto area, like, this is just black and white facts. This is not like me making up numbers or anything. In the last 10 years, if you bought a property for $500,000, it is now worth over $1 million. Period. Like, right. It's probably worth more than that, but I'm going to give you the lower end of the appreciation. So it didn't matter what you bought. You could have bought like a garage here, you know what I mean? And it doubled. So we also know in the last 100 years, this is Greater Toronto Area,
Mm-hmm.
in the last 100 years, on average, every decade, on average, so sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little less, prices double. So just do one of the strategies. They all work.
Yeah. In your own investing, do you focus only on Toronto, or have you expanded beyond Toronto?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I personally only do. We have what's called the Greater Toronto Area here.
Sure.
It's a 50-mile radius. I usually say 75-kilometer radius because we're Canadian, but
Right.
it's a 50-mile radius with about 6.6, almost 7 million people now, right? Our immigration stats tell us that we're going to have another 2 million people here in 10 years. Okay, and that's even like post-pandemic. Like we're gonna get there. Okay, it was actually gonna be a little bit more than 2 million, but I think it's safe to say now, because the borders have been closed for the last 6 months or whatever it's been, we're gonna get to about 2 million people. So for me, it's also the place I'm born and raised. So
Yeah.
if you say Don Mills, if you say a street Don Mills, I know where on Don Mills is a good place. I also know where it's a bad place. I know where there's population growth. I know where there's transit. For me, put me anywhere. Put me in Boston right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to go purchase something where there's transit, because I know world real estate. In
Yeah.
fact, the university that I'm sure we all know is Harvard. They did a study, I think it was about 4 years ago, and they did a study right across the world, and they looked at what happened to real estate when it was less than a 300-meter walk, 300 to 400-meter walk to some type of major transit line.
Mm-hmm.
And right across the world, all the major cities right across the world, you could see that the values appreciated the most, but the rentability was at its best as well, meaning the speed at which you can get tenants over and over again, and the fact that the rents also appreciated the highest around transit. So for me, put me anywhere in the world, I know what I'm looking for, right? But I also only focus on the Greater Toronto Area, because if you said, like, I don't even know, Boston Street's numbered there. Like, yeah. So if you said 32nd and 54th, if that,
Well,
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I guess it'd be 32nd and 53rd Street. That really wouldn't mean much to me. So I stay very, very focused in the Greater Toronto Area. In fact, my company, where the company name is REC Canada, which means that we can help anybody right across our country from the perspective of introducing you to investor-savvy real estate agents right across the country. But our team of 34 realtors, we focus and hone in on that 50-mile radius.
Okay, excellent. So I wish Boston was like gridded out like that. Unfortunately, it was all like cow paths. And so it's a giant mess to figure out parts of Boston. What you described is more like New York, but yeah, I think it's a good illustration.
Yeah, well, Toronto, other way. As I mentioned to you off air, I was in Boston not too long ago. It's very similar to Toronto. It has a very similar feel to Toronto. We don't have numbered streets here as well, and I wish we did, because it would make life easier. Because when you come here and I say go to Don Mills and Shepherd, you're like, what the heck, where is this? You know? And so and then what comes north or south? Like, I believe the numbered system is a lot easier anyways.
Yeah, it is.
But I digress.
So I'm curious then, with your focus right now, let's say Greater Toronto Area, how are you thinking about what's going to happen post-COVID? Because a lot of cities right now are experiencing an exodus of people because they can live remotely. Like San Francisco is a good example. People are leaving because rent's high. They don't need to be there. Is Toronto, let's say, experiencing that? And how are you thinking about property values 5-10 years from now with that?
Yeah, so is Toronto experiencing that right now as we sit? Yes, we are. We're starting to see people move out of the downtown core and get into areas where they can get a little bit more land. Like any urban city in the world, values are highest right in like the downtown core, and then it usually spreads out from there. And so you always drive till you qualify, right? However, my personal opinion, and I love that the fact that these are recorded because we can go back to it, right? But my personal opinion, for the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, the one problem we have here is traffic. It's bad, okay? And so the people that are rushing out right now, I think they're going to regret it. I think they're going to regret it because it's happened in the past before, where we started to see people move out out of the downtown area. But in the last decade, we saw everybody come back in. Why? Because what should take 20 minutes when there's no one, like on a Saturday or a Sunday, call it a Sunday afternoon, Saturday morning, 20 minutes. During the week, it's an hour and 20 minutes, especially when it snows here. Like we get some heavy snowfalls, and so it's an hour 30 minutes. It takes me 35 minutes to get in, like during COVID right now, we're calling it COVID traffic. It takes about that 35 minutes. But when it snows, sometimes it takes me close to 2 hours to get in, right? I'm only gonna be okay with that for a little bit, because what happens now is it's lifestyle, right? Like now it's 3 hours I'm on the road a day, and then one of the partners in the household say, honey, like, it's too much. You're not home at this time. I don't get to see you, and you don't get to spend time. Okay, you know what? It's worth it if we spend an extra couple of $100,000. Now, I say a couple of $100,000, and people are like, yeah, dude, like, who the heck has a couple of $100,000? With real estate, it doesn't work like that. You got to look at a couple of $100,000 on financing amortized over 25 years. It costs you $1,000 on, like, when rates are at 4%, 3.5%, 4%. Today, our interest rates are less than 2%, like, for 5 years. So every 100,000 probably costs about $400 a month. And so for $800 a month, what's your time? What's your sanity worth, right? And so we're going to see, it always happens. People panic, people rush. We all get caught up in all this, like, oh my God, okay, I can live anywhere. But then let's see when offices open up again, because I think that's going to happen as well. As I run a team of 34 realtors, but our realtors and my business partner manages our realtors. They're kind of on the road anyways. My 10th support staff, though, they're all under my wing here at the office. They know, like, and I know, we got a lot accomplished for that first 8 to 10 weeks during the lockdown as we all worked from home. But I knew I would never keep it like that. Why? Because I don't care how much people think that productivity can stay at a certain level working from home. That's the problem. It can only stay at a certain level. You don't have that back and forth. And look, I'm getting 10 times more done now that we're all kind of in the same vicinity. And so I think offices are going to start, and organizations and companies are going to realize that as well. They'll figure it out. Like, if you need to be in a cubicle that's like bubbled up and glassed up, guess what? That's what the bigger companies, and we have 6 major banks here. That's what they're going to do. And if you want a job, you're going to have to work like that. And so, but then you have to drive to the office. And now we get back into what I was saying earlier. You're not going to want to live that far out.
Yeah. All right. Good to know. So in sales, 2 big things that come up: rejection, fear, and the fear of rejection. So how did you get past the idea of fear and rejection? How do you work with either your customers and clients about fear and rejection, and how it not to hold you back?
I think you did a great job there by saying, like, fear of rejection.
Yeah.
And I say that because it was very easy for me to deal with it, because I realized rejection is kind of false, right? And what I mean by that is, like, if I was going to ask you for a drink today, like, let's go out for a drink, Yuri, and you said no, I'm no worse off because I never had that drink with you anyways, right? And so if you said yes, my life just got better now. I got what I want, right? I wanted to have a drink with Yuri. I wanted to take him out for a drink. But when you say no, I'm not any worse off because I never had it either, right? To start with. And so once I came to that realization, I just, like, no never really, like, I'm very numb to no now, right?
Okay.
I just know it's not right now. So in sales, when I'm on a phone with a client or with consultation and they say no, okay, great, let's move on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't try to sell anybody. In fact, there's a sign in my studio here that says removing friction. It really has a lot more to do with the fact that I'm coming out with aside from the real estate book, I'm coming out with a personal development book, and the title is Removing Friction: How to Get Out of Your Own Way. But it also translates into, when I had this sign, when I kind of came up with the branding of this, it also, I want my team to see it on a regular basis, which is, let's remove the friction of the sales process. So people say to me all the time, oh, Jas, you're really good at sales. And I'm like, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. But I've always known, like, I am actually not a good salesperson. What I figured out, Yuri, is how to make it easy for people to buy. So I just took out the, like, you got to buy 7 year. If you don't buy right now, like you're going to regret this.